Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a forest and the world around you is burning. The sky is orange, the trees are screaming with heat, animals are running past you in every direction, and somewhere in the chaos, something happens that will change the entire course of human history. You smell something, not smoke, not ash, something else. Something that makes your mouth fill with water even though every instinct in your body is telling you to run. You do not know what that smell is. You have never smelled it before, but something deep inside your body responds to it. Something older than thought, older than memory, older than any word you could use to describe it. That smell is cooked meat. And this is the story of how fire did not just warm your ancestors, it rebuilt them from the inside out. Go back about 1 million years, maybe further. The exact date is still debated by scientists. But at some point during the long stretch of human prehistory, lightning struck a tree, or a volcano erupted, or 2 dry branches scraped together long enough in a windstorm. The details do not matter. What matters is that a forest caught fire, a real fire, a massive sweeping wildfire that swallowed entire acres of land and left behind nothing but char and silence. Your ancestors did not start that fire. They were not that clever yet, but they were watching. Homo erectus, the ancestor who likely first encountered fire in a meaningful way, had been walking the earth for hundreds of thousands of years by this point. Researchers like Richard Wrangham at Harvard have spent decades studying what fire meant to early humans, and his findings are remarkable. Fire was not just a tool. Fire was the reason your brain grew as large as it did. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. After the wildfire burned out, the forest fell quiet, and your ancestors, cautious and curious in equal measure, crept out of the shadows and into the scorched landscape. They were scavengers as much as hunters. They ate whatever they could find. And what they found on that blackened ground stopped them completely. Animals that could not escape the fire were lying there, cooked. Now, your ancestors had eaten raw meat for millions of years before this moment. The human body is actually quite capable of digesting raw animal flesh, but there is a difference between capable and pleasurable. And when the first early human picked up a piece of that burned meat and bit into it, the difference must have been staggering. Cooked meat is easier to chew. The heat breaks down the tough muscle fibers and connective tissue, making the nutrients far easier to extract. A body gets more energy from cooked food than from raw food of the exact same weight. Wrangham argues in his book Catching Fire that this single discovery, cooking, is what allowed the human gut to shrink and the human brain to grow. Because digesting raw meat is expensive, it takes enormous energy. When you take that metabolic burden off the gut, that freed energy goes somewhere else. And in your ancestors, it went straight into the skull. But none of that science was known to the human crouching in the ash 1 million years ago. All they knew was that the burnt animal tasted better than anything they had ever eaten. Richer, more satisfying. Their body told them something important had just happened. Their brain recorded it, and they wanted more. The problem was obvious. The fire was gone. The wildfire had moved on or burned itself out. There was no way to recreate it. Your ancestor could not rub 2 sticks together yet. They did not know how to make a spark. That knowledge was still tens of thousands of years away. So they did something else. Something that required an entirely different kind of intelligence. They waited for fire to come to them. When lightning struck nearby and a tree caught flame, they did not run. They approached carefully, with enormous respect for something they could not control or fully understand. And then, using a long stick or a thick piece of bark, they carried a piece of that fire back to their camp. This was the moment that changed everything, not creating fire, capturing it. Archaeologist Andrew Sorensen at Leiden University has studied ancient tools that show evidence of fire-making attempts, and the evidence suggests that the ability to create fire from scratch came far later than the ability to maintain a fire that already existed. Your ancestors were fire keepers long before they were fire makers. And keeping a fire alive is harder than it sounds. Fire needs fuel, it needs oxygen, it needs attention. Someone had to watch it through the night. Someone had to feed it dry wood before it died. Someone had to shield it from rain. Someone had to carry a burning coal carefully in a vessel of bark or bone if the group needed to move. The moment your ancestors committed to keeping a fire alive, they were no longer just surviving. They were managing something, planning ahead, thinking in terms of hours and days, not just the immediate moment in front of them. This is what researchers call a cognitive leap. Anthropologist Dennis Sangaith at Simon Fraser University has studied the evidence for fire use in early human sites and found that consistent, controlled use of fire seems to appear and disappear in the fossil record before finally becoming permanent. which means it was not easy. Your ancestors lost their fires. They went cold. They went hungry. And then somehow they found fire again and started over? Think about what that took. The memory, the patience, the motivation to try again after failure. This is not animal behavior. This is something new. Now go back to the cooked meat, because after the first encounter with food that fire had transformed, something changed in the social structure of early human groups. Meat that was cooked had to be eaten near the fire, which meant everyone gathered in the same place at the same time. A fire at the center of a camp is not just warmth, it is a meeting point. It is a shared focus. It draws the group together every single evening in a way that nothing had before. Anthropologists believe this is where human social bonding, as you know it today, was partially born. Around a fire, in the dark, together. The fire also did something else. It pushed back predators. The African night is full of things that want to eat you. Lions, hyenas, and leopards. These animals had been a constant, deadly threat to early humans for millions of years. Fire terrified them. So for the first time, your ancestors could sleep without one eye open. They could rest properly, deeply, and rest changes a brain. Rest is when memory consolidates, when learning sticks, when the body repairs itself. A human who sleeps well thinks better than a human who does not. Every night around a fire was a night of better sleep, better recovery, and incremental cognitive growth. Over thousands of generations, this adds up. The humans who were best at keeping fire alive survived better, ate better, slept better, reproduced more successfully, and slowly the population shifted toward individuals who were drawn to fire, who were good at managing it, who found comfort in its glow rather than terror. You are one of those individuals. That is not a metaphor. When you sit in front of a fireplace and feel inexplicably calm, that is your ancient nervous system recognizing something it was shaped by. Researchers at the University of Alabama, led by Christopher Lynn, have found that watching a real fire lowers blood pressure and promotes a state of relaxed social openness in modern humans. You do not have to learn to feel safe around fire. You already know how to feel safe around fire. That knowledge was written into your body before language existed. Eventually, tens of thousands of years after the first captured flame, your ancestors did learn to create fire. Percussion fire starting, striking flint against iron pyrite to make a spark. Friction fire, pressing and spinning a wooden spindle into a notched board until an ember glowed in the dust. These were technologies invented, taught, passed down, and they gave humans something they had never had before: independence from lightning. You did not need a wildfire anymore. You did not need a volcanic eruption. You could make fire whenever and wherever you needed it. In winter, in the rain, in a cave, in a new land your group had never visited before. Fire became portable not just as a carried flame, but as a knowledge that lived inside human minds and hands. This is why humans spread across the entire planet while every other large primate stayed in Africa. Not because you were faster or stronger, because you could survive cold, and cold could not kill what fire protected. Tonight, at some point, you will probably turn on a light, or light a candle, or start a stove. You will not think twice about it. It will be as automatic and unremarkable as breathing. But the version of you that stood in the ash of a burned forest 1 million years ago, tasting cooked meat for the very first time, looking at a dying ember and deciding not to let it go out, that version of you would not recognize the world you live in. What they would recognize is the feeling, that pull toward warmth, that instinct to gather, that ancient, wordless certainty that as long as the fire is burning, everything is going to be okay. You still carry that certainty with you every single day. It was the first thing your ancestors ever decided